The streets were broken and empty after the war. Shops were half destroyed. Walls carried black marks of fire, and the wind carried dust through the ruins. Humans and aliens once traded here, but now only silence lived in the market. The human walked slowly, his boots pressing the cracked stone. He had nothing much left in his bag, only a piece of dry bread and a bottle of water. His eyes moved across the broken stalls, searching for anything useful. But he stopped when he felt something, a pair of eyes watching him from the shadows. There, behind a broken wall, a small alien girl was hiding. Her body was thin, her clothes torn, and her skin pale with hunger. Her glowing eyes shined faintly in the dark, showing both fear and hope. She looked no older than 12, her hands shaking as she held her stomach. The human paused, his mind fighting. He himself had little food, and he needed strength for the journey ahead. But when he saw her, he remembered what it felt like to starve. He remembered the pain of waiting for someone, anyone, to share even a little. He slowly reached into his bag and pulled out the bread. The girl gasped when she saw it, her eyes widening as if it was treasure. He broke the bread in half, then bent down and stretched his hand toward her. "Take it," he said softly. At first she did not move. Her fear was strong, as if she had been chased away before. But the human stayed still, his hand open, the bread resting there. Finally, the girl crawled out, her small fingers trembling as she grabbed it. The moment the bread touched her lips, she ate with desperate speed, her eyes filled with tears as she chewed. The human watched quietly, his throat tight. He opened the bottle and offered her water. She drank deeply, as if it was the sweetest gift in the galaxy. For a while there was only silence, only the sound of her chewing and drinking. When she finally slowed down, she looked at him, her glowing eyes fixed on his face. Then, with a small voice, she whispered something strange, words that made his heart freeze. "I heard you want a wife," she said, her voice soft but clear. "My mother is perfect for you." The human blinked, unsure he had heard right. He gave food to a starving girl, and she thanked him by offering her mother. He frowned, thinking maybe it was a trick, but the girl's face showed no lie, only innocence and certainty. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The girl leaned closer, her eyes glowing stronger in the dim light. "You saved me," she whispered again. "Now you must come with me." The human's heart beat faster. Every instinct told him to be careful, that this could be a trap. But something in her tone, something in her small trembling hands told him it was more, not a trap, but a strange custom, something deep in her people's ways. He stood still, his eyes scanning the ruined street. Around him, the shadows stretched long, and the silence grew heavier. Only the girl's voice broke it, echoing in his ears. "My mother is perfect for you." The human felt a chill run through him. Why did she believe this? Who was her mother? And why did it feel like destiny was pulling him into something greater than himself? He wanted to walk away. He wanted to shake his head and tell her he had no time, but his feet did not move. Instead, he found himself staring at the girl, at her glowing eyes full of strange hope. She reached out her hand, small and thin, yet filled with determination. "Come," she said. "Please follow me." The human's breath grew heavy, his grip tightening around the empty bag. One step could change everything. One step could bind him to a fate he did not understand. Girl waited, her eyes never leaving him. The ruined market around them felt like it had stopped breathing, and in that heavy silence the human finally realized. He was no longer just a stranger in a broken land. He had been chosen, though he did not know why. The wind blew again, carrying dust past his boots. The human's heart pounded, the girl's words burning in his mind. Her mother, perfect for him. He had given food to a child, but in return, destiny had given him something far more dangerous. And as he looked at the path she wanted him to walk, he knew the story was only beginning. The girl's hand stayed outstretched, small and fragile, yet it carried a strange power. The human stared at it, unsure, his mind filled with questions. Why had she said those words? Why her mother, and why now? Still, he felt something in his chest pulling him forward. Slowly, he placed his rough hand into hers. The girl's grip was weak but steady, and she tugged him gently, urging him to follow. Her eyes glowed faintly, leading the way through the ruined market. The silence of the place felt even heavier now, as if the world itself was waiting to see what he would choose. They walked past broken stalls and shattered statues. Each step carried the human deeper into the unknown. He glanced at the girl. Her, back straight, her step sure despite her weakness. It was as if she was carrying out something sacred, something ancient. "Where are we going?" the human finally asked, his voice low. The girl turned her head only slightly, enough for him to see her glowing eyes. "To my home," she whispered. "To my mother." Her words were calm, but carried a weight he could not understand. The human tightened his grip on his bag, his thoughts racing. He had heard stories of alien customs, strange traditions built after centuries of survival. But never had he imagined he would be caught inside one. And yet, here he was, following a child through ruins toward something that felt like destiny. As they moved, the girl began to speak. Her voice was soft but clear, cutting through the silence of the broken streets. "In our people," she said, "we honor those who share food." The human frowned, his brow tight with confusion. She continued, "Long ago, when the world was harsher, when even water was rare, those who gave food to the hungry were chosen." Her small voice carried a strange pride. It was our law of life. It was how bonds were made. The human's chest grew heavy, so it wasn't just gratitude, it was something far older. Deeper, he wanted to argue, to say he only gave bread because she was starving. But her glowing eyes looked at him with certainty, as if she already knew the answer he would give. Soon the ruins began to change. The broken stones gave way to tall arches still standing, and the cracked walls looked less destroyed here. It felt like walking from death into something alive. Though old and scarred, the girl moved faster now, as if energy returned to her with every step closer to her home. Finally they reached it, a house carved into stone, its walls marked with strange symbols glowing faintly in the dim light. The door stood tall, built of dark iron and bone, a reminder of strength and survival. The girl stopped before it, looking back at the human with a small, nervous smile. "She is inside," she whispered. "My mother." Before the human could speak, the door opened, slowly and heavily. From the shadows stepped a figure, tall and graceful, her presence filling the air like fire. The alien woman stood there, her body covered in a robe of woven silver threads. Her skin carried the same faint glow as her daughter's, but stronger, deeper, more radiant. Her eyes, sharp and commanding, locked on the human the moment she saw him. Her posture was straight, her chin high, her presence like that of a queen. The girl ran to her, holding her mother's hand with both of hers. "Mother," she said, her voice trembling with joy, "he gave me food." The woman's gaze softened only slightly as she looked at her child, then hardened again as it returned to the human. She stepped forward, her every movement smooth, powerful. Her eyes never blinked, never broke contact. When she finally spoke, her voice was like thunder wrapped in silk. "You saved my daughter. Now you must face me." The human felt his breath catch. He had expected gratitude, maybe a simple, "Thank you." But these words carried the weight of a challenge, a demand, a destiny he never asked for. His hands clenched at his sides, his mind racing. The girl held tightly to her mother's robe, her eyes wide with expectation. The human stood frozen, unsure whether to step back or forward. The silence between them stretched long, heavy with meaning. Finally, the mother spoke again, her tone sharper, her words unshakable. "In my people, giving food is not a small act," she said. "It is a bond. It is a promise." Her eyes glowed brighter as she took one more step closer. "You gave life to my child, and now, human, you must prove if you are worthy of what comes next." The human's chest tightened. He had thought he was only surviving another day, another broken street, another war-torn memory. But now, standing, Before this powerful alien woman, he realized something had shifted. One small act of kindness had pulled him into the heart of a tradition older than himself, a tradition that might decide his fate. The girl looked up at him with hope. The mother looked down at him with fire, and the human caught between them finally understood. The real test had not even begun. The human stood in silence facing the tall alien woman. Her presence filled the air, strong and unshakable. The girl stood by her side, holding her robe, her glowing eyes filled with hope. The human felt like he was standing before a ruler, not just a mother. The alien woman's gaze never left him. Her eyes seemed to pierce into his thoughts, searching, weighing, judging. Finally, she spoke, her voice deep, calm, and filled with command. "You gave food to my child, human, and you must know what that means." The human swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. He wanted to say it meant nothing, only kindness, only pity for a starving girl. But something in the woman's eyes told him that would be an insult. So he stayed quiet, waiting. The woman lifted her hand, pointing toward the glowing symbols carved into the stone walls around her home. "These marks tell the story of our people," she said, her tone heavy with pride. "We survived through hunger, through storms, through endless winters, and in those times one law kept us alive." She stepped closer, her robe trailing across the ground, her presence pressing against him like weight. The one who gives food binds life, and the one who accepts food binds fate. The human's eyes narrowed slightly. A custom, an old tradition, one that seemed more like a chain than gratitude. The woman's voice grew softer but sharper. "My daughter took your bread, your water, your gift of survival, and now the bond is sealed." The girl nodded quickly, her small voice breaking the silence. "It is true, human. It is how we lived when all else failed. No one gives food without meaning. No one receives without promise." Her eyes glowed, bright, her face hopeful. "You are part of us now." The human shook his head, his chest heavy. "I only gave bread," he muttered, his voice rough. But the mother's sharp gaze cut into his words before they could settle. "No, you gave more than bread," she said firmly. "You gave her tomorrow, and in our law that cannot be forgotten." The air between them grew tense, thick with meaning. The human felt trapped, like a hunter caught in a snare. He had not chosen this, but somehow, by one act of kindness, he had stepped into a web older than the war itself. The woman turned, motioning for him to follow. "Come, you must see," she said. The human hesitated, but the girl pulled at his hand again, her eyes begging him not to resist, so he followed, each step echoing against the stone. Inside the carved home, the walls glowed faintly with strange lights. Symbols and paintings told the story of families, of hunger, of survival through giving and receiving. The air smelled of old smoke and herbs, heavy and sharp. At the center stood a great table of stone, upon it resting bowls carved with symbols. The woman gestured toward the bowls. "In these we kept the food of survival. Every family had one. Every bond was sealed here." Her eyes flicked toward the human, hard and searching. "Do you see now?" she asked. The human did not answer, but he could feel the weight of what she meant. The girl ran to the table, her small hands brushing the stone. "My father once gave food to my mother here," she whispered, her voice low, almost sad. "But he is gone now. The war took him, and I thought no one would ever give again." She turned her glowing eyes to the human. "But you did." The human's chest tightened. He had only wanted to help a starving child, but now he stood where another man once had, where fate was written in stone. The mother stepped closer, her presence filling the space like fire. "Our custom does not bend, human. You cannot undo what is done." Her voice grew sharp, final. "You gave food. Now you are bound to us." The human's breath grew heavy. He felt the walls closing in, the glowing symbols burning into his vision. Bound. The word rang in his ears like a chain clamping shut. He wanted to deny it, to turn and leave, but something deeper held him there, something he could not name. The girl's small hand found his again, her voice soft but certain. My mother is perfect for you, I told you, and now you see it is true. The human looked at her, then at the woman, their glowing eyes watching him with expectation and fire. The silence grew thick, broken only by the faint hum of the glowing walls. The mother straightened, her voice deep and commanding once more. If you are truly worthy, human, then you will accept what has been given and prove yourself. Her words carried the weight of both challenge and judgment. Her gaze did not move, her eyes burned with certainty. The human's chest rose and fell, his mind torn between denial and acceptance. But deep inside he knew this was no longer just about him. The bond had already been written, sealed by a piece of bread, and whether he wanted it or not, destiny was pulling him further in. The girl smiled softly, her small voice whispering the words again. You saved me, human, and now you must save her too. The mother's gaze grew sharper, her presence unyielding, and the human realized the truth. This was only the beginning of a test he had never asked for. The human stood in silence, the weight of the alien custom pressing on his shoulders. Like heavy chains, the girl's glowing eyes stayed on him, filled with hope, while her mother's gaze burned like fire, sharp and unyielding. He had given bread, he had given water, but now the woman demanded more. Her words hung in the air, heavy with command. If you are worthy, you must prove yourself. The human's jaw tightened. What proof? He asked, his voice steady though his chest pounded. The alien woman turned, her silver robe flowing as she moved deeper into the stone hall. Come, she said, her tone allowing no refusal. You will see, he followed, though every step felt heavier, as if the ground itself wanted to hold him back. The girl walked beside him, clutching his hand with her small fingers, whispering softly, Do not be afraid, human. You are strong, stronger than any I have seen. Her words gave him little comfort, but he did not pull his hand away. At the end of the hall, a massive door stood waiting, carved with sharp symbols glowing red instead of blue. The woman placed her hand on the stone, and with a deep rumble, the door slid open. Beyond it lay a vast chamber, round and high, its walls blackened with scars, its floor cracked from battles long past. The air smelled of dust and old blood. The human stepped inside cautiously, his eyes scanning the arena-like space. It felt like walking into a trap, yet something inside told him it was more than that. This was not just a place of death, it was a place of proving. The woman's voice confirmed it, echoing through the chamber. In our people, words mean nothing, only action binds truth. She motioned with her hand, and from the shadows, gates slid open with loud grinding sounds. The human's breath grew heavier as a creature stepped out. It was large, its skin rough and scaled, its eyes glowing faintly like fire beneath smoke. 4 legs carried its heavy body, and its jaw opened with a growl that shook the walls. The girl gasped, holding tighter to his hand. Mother, no, he gave food, that is enough, she pleaded, her voice trembling. But the woman shook her head, her eyes still locked on the human. Food saves, yes, but protection binds. If he is to stand beside us, he must fight. The human's stomach twisted. He had no weapon, no shield, only his strength and his will. The beast lowered its head, growling louder, its claws scraping against stone. The woman's voice rang out like judgment. Show me, human, if your kindness is matched with courage. The gate slammed shut behind him, trapping him with the beast. For a heartbeat, silence filled the chamber. Only the sound of his breathing and the creature's growl. Then the beast charged, stone cracking under its weight, its roar shaking the walls. The human moved fast, rolling aside as claws slashed the ground where he stood. He grabbed a loose piece of stone, heavy and sharp. With a roar of his own, he swung it at the beast's leg, the impact echoing loud. The creature stumbled, but not for long, its eyes burning hotter as it turned toward him again. The human's chest burned, sweat dripping down his brow. This was not just a fight for survival. This was a fight for something bigger. The girl's voice echoed from behind the gate, desperate and fearful. Be careful, please, human, you must win. Her words gave him strength, reminding him of why he had stepped into this path. Not for glory, not for power, but because he had chosen compassion, and that choice was being tested now. The beast lunged again, its jaw snapping inches. From his arm, the human twisted, grabbing a broken spear shaft lying on the floor. He jammed it forward with all his strength, driving it into the creature's throat. The beast roared, thrashing, blood spilling onto the stone. The human held on, pushing deeper until the creature collapsed with a final shudder. Silence fell heavy in the chamber. The human stood over the fallen beast, his chest heaving, his hands shaking but firm. He had survived, and not only survived, he had won. Slowly, he dropped the broken spear and turned toward the gate, his eyes locking with the woman's. For the first time, her face softened, just slightly. Her eyes, still burned, but now with something different, a recognition, a respect. "You fought with no weapon, with only will," she said, her voice lower. "Humans are not like the males of my people." The girl's face lit up, tears of joy in her glowing eyes. "You see, Mother, I told you. He is strong. He is worthy." The human said nothing, only wiped the sweat and blood from his hands. But inside, his chest was heavy, his mind spinning with what had just happened. The mother stepped closer, her eyes never leaving him. "You have shown courage," she said, "but this is only the first step." Her words carried both warning and promise. The human felt his breath catch again. One test had ended, but many more waited. The girl ran to the gate, reaching her hand toward him through the bars. "You are part of us now, human. Nothing will change that," she whispered. And as he looked, at her small hand, at her glowing eyes filled with hope, he realized he was deeper in this than he could ever escape. The challenge was not over. It had only begun. The chamber doors rumbled open again, the heavy stone grinding against the floor. The human stepped out, his chest still burning from the fight, sweat dripping down his neck. Behind him, the beast's body lay silent, its blood staining the cracked stones of the arena. The girl rushed forward, her small arms wrapping around his leg, her eyes glowing with joy. "You won, human. I knew you would," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. The alien woman stood tall at the edge of the chamber, her robe shining faintly in the dim light. Her sharp eyes scanned him from head to toe, studying the cuts, the dirt, the strength still burning in his posture. For the first time, her lips curved into the smallest trace of a smile. "You fought without fear," she said, her voice deep, calm, but softer now. "And you protected life. That is what matters." The human did not answer, his breath still heavy, his mind turning in circles. He had not come here to prove anything, yet he found himself proving everything. The mother turned, motioning with her hand. "Come, you must rest," she said, her tone carrying both command and care. The girl tugged at his arm, her glowing eyes begging him to follow, and so he did. Though his heart was heavy with questions, inside their home the air was warmer, filled with the scent of herbs burning in stone bowls. The walls glowed faintly with soft blue lights, casting shadows that danced like spirits. The girl hurried, to bring water in a carved cup, placing it in his hands with pride. The human drank deeply, the cool liquid soothing his throat. The mother moved closer, kneeling beside him with a cloth dipped in strange silver liquid. Without a word, she began, cleaning the cuts along his arm. Her touch was firm but careful, her fingers steady, her movements precise. The human watched her silently, unsure why his chest tightened with every brush of her hand. "You risked your life for a child not your own," she said quietly, her eyes never leaving his wounds. "Why?" The human's jaw tightened, his voice low. "Because she was hungry, because no one else would." Her hands paused for a moment, her eyes flicking up to his face. There was no pride in his words, no boasting, only truth. Something shifted in her gaze, something softer than before. Her hand continued slower this time, almost thoughtful. "In my people. Males take pride, in strength, in power, in what they can claim," she whispered, but you give without asking, you fight without demanding reward." The human stayed silent, though his chest felt heavier. The girl sat nearby, humming softly as if peace had finally returned to her small world. But between the human and the woman, the air grew different, thicker. Her glowing eyes lingered longer on him, her hand staying on his skin a moment too much. "You are not like them," she said softly, almost to herself. The human turned his face away, unsure what to answer. His mind reminded him this was dangerous, that she was testing him, binding him with custom and law, yet a part of him could not deny the warmth in her touch. The strange pull in her gaze, the silence stretched, broken only by the girl's soft humming. The mother finished tending to his wounds but did not move away, her presence close, her breath steady, her eyes watching him. "You may not see it, yet human. But you have already stepped into our lives, and now there is no turning back." The human shifted uneasily, but her words clung to his heart like chains. Temptation lingered there, not just in her beauty, but in her strength, in the way she carried fire and calm together. He felt it. Danger, yet also something deeper, something he could not name. And that was the true temptation, not just her touch, but the bond forming beyond his control. The girl's voice broke the heavy silence, innocent and sweet. "Mother, he will stay with us, won't he?" The mother's eyes did not leave his face, her voice calm, almost gentle now. "If he is truly worthy, he will." The human's chest rose and fell, his mind torn. He wanted to deny it, to leave, to say this was not his path. But his heart betrayed him, whispering that he was already too deep. The bond was growing, stronger than he realized. The girl curled up by the fire, her glowing eyes slowly closing as sleep claimed her. The room grew quieter, the flames casting long shadows on the walls. The human sat still, his wounds tended, his strength returning. But his thoughts were storming, circling around the woman beside him. She rose to her feet, her robe flowing as she moved, but her eyes lingered on him for one last moment. "You have proven strength, human," she said, her voice low, steady. "But strength is not enough." Her eyes glowed faintly, burning in the dim light. "Tomorrow, you will face more, and only then will we know if you are truly one of us." She turned and walked away, her steps echoing through the stone hall. The human watched her disappear into the shadows, his chest tight, his breath uneven. Temptation was already burning inside him, pulling him closer to something he did not yet understand. And as he sat by the fire, the girl sleeping peacefully, the weight of destiny pressed heavier on his shoulders. He knew tomorrow would not bring peace. It would bring another test and another choice. The fire burned low, its glow flickering against the stone walls. The human sat in silence, his mind heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. The girl slept peacefully near the flames, her small body curled, her glowing eyes dim under her closed lids. But the mother had not returned, her presence missing, though her words still echoed in his chest. "Tomorrow you will face more, and only then will we know if you are truly one of us." The human's fist tightened around his knees. He had not come here to be judged, not to be tested, and yet every step dragged him deeper. It was not only survival anymore, it was something else, something binding. A bond that had started with bread and water but was now tied to fate itself. When the morning came, the sound of horns woke him, deep and heavy, shaking the air. The girl stirred awake, her eyes glowing softly. "It is time," she whispered, her voice filled with both fear and pride. She took his hand, her small fingers pressing tight, and led him outside. The human's heart pounded as light hit the stone square before the alien home. Dozens of figures were waiting. Tall alien men and women, their eyes glowing in different shades. Their robes shimmered with colors of their houses, their voices low with whispers. At the center stood the mother, tall and strong, her silver robe flowing in the morning wind. When she saw the human, her eyes locked on his, unblinking, powerful. The crowd grew silent, their glowing eyes fixed on him. The mother raised her hand, her voice carrying across the square. "People of my house, last night a human fed my daughter, and by our law a bond was formed." Whispers rose, some shocked, some angry, some amused. She continued, her tone sharp. "He fought in the arena unarmed and lived. a feat many of our own could not do. The crowd murmured louder, some nodding, others shaking their heads. The human's chest tightened, his throat dry, the mother's voice cut through the noise again. But now the decision must be his. The human's head jerked up, his eyes narrowing. "What decision?" he asked, his voice low but steady. The mother's gaze did not waver, her words heavy. "Will you accept the bond you created? Will you stand with us, or will you walk away?" The crowd's voices rose, some shouting, some demanding, "He is not one of us." One male growled, "He has no right. He saved her." Another female snapped, "He earned the right." The voices clashed like storm winds, anger and hope mixing in the air. The girl ran to him, grabbing his hand, her glowing eyes filled with pleading. "Stay, please, human. You are part of us now. Do not leave us." Her small voice cut through the noise louder than the shouts. The human looked down at her, his chest aching, his thoughts torn apart. He looked back up, meeting the mother's gaze. Her eyes held fire, strong and steady, but behind it something softer, something waiting. She did not speak, she only stared, as if daring him to choose. The silence pressed heavy on him, the crowd holding its breath. The human's thoughts raced. If he walked away, he would be free of their customs, free of their chains. But he would leave behind the girl who trusted him, the woman who tested him, the people who had already judged. Him, if he stayed, he would bind himself to a future he did not understand, a bond he did not choose, but one he had already stepped into. His chest rose and fell, his heart hammering. The girl's small hand trembled in his, her eyes filled with tears. The mother stood tall, her eyes burning, waiting. The crowd leaned closer, whispering, demanding, watching. Finally, the human stepped forward, his voice carrying across the square. "I did not come here for bonds. I did not come here to be tested," he said, his voice rough, his body tense. "But I gave food because it was right. I fought because I had to, and if that is what makes me part of you, then so be it." The crowd gasped, voices rising in shock, some cheering, some shouting in anger. The girl cried with joy, hugging his leg tightly. "I knew it. I knew you would stay." The mother's eyes locked on him, her fire still burning, but her lips curved just slightly, a rare smile. "You have spoken, human," she said, her voice carrying, like thunder, "and your words will bind you here." The crowd roared with voices, the sound echoing through the ruined city. Some shouted in celebration, some in rage, but all eyes were on him. The human stood tall, his heart still pounding. He had made the choice, but deep inside he knew the path ahead would only grow harder. The mother stepped closer, her robe flowing, her eyes never leaving his. "Your decision is made," she said firmly, "but tomorrow, you will prove it again. For one choice is not enough, not here." Her voice was both warning and promise. The human's chest tightened, but he did not look away. The bond was sealed, the decision made, and his fate now tied to theirs. The crowd's roar echoed through the broken city square, their glowing eyes fixed on the human. Some shouted in anger, their voices sharp like knives, others cried with joy, their cheers rising into the sky. The girl held his hand tightly, her small body trembling, but her glowing eyes shined with hope brighter than ever. The mother stood tall in the center, her silver robe flowing, her face unreadable, though her eyes burned like fire. The human's chest rose and fell, his heart pounding like drums of war. He had spoken, he had chosen, but the weight of that choice pressed heavy on him. He felt the judgment of dozens of eyes, the pull of a law he barely understood. But deep inside, he knew there was no turning back. The mother raised her hand and the voices of the crowd died down. Her voice rang clear, strong, commanding. "The human has spoken. He accepts the bond, he accepts the path, and so by our law it shall be." Whispers rippled through the crowd, some approving, others filled with bitterness. But no one dared challenge her. Her authority burned too strong. The girl squeezed his hand, her small voice soft but filled with pride. "You are ours now, human, I told you. You belong here." Her words struck deep, both sweet and heavy, binding him tighter than the law itself. The mother stepped closer, her glowing eyes locked on him, but this time her gaze was different, still sharp, still fierce, but carrying something softer, respect perhaps, or recognition, something unspoken yet powerful. "You chose with courage," she said, her voice low, steady. "But words are not the end, words are the beginning." The human clenched his jaw, his voice rough but strong. "Then tell me, what comes next?" The mother tilted her head, her eyes unblinking. "What comes next is life, human, life with us. Life where your strength and your kindness must stand together. For you have entered our law, and you cannot step back." The crowd stirred again, their voices low. Some whispered of hope, that maybe this human could bring change. Others whispered of fear that he would bring danger, but all of them knew. He was no longer an outsider, he was bound. The girl pulled at his arm, her voice filled with excitement. "Come, come, you must eat with us now, that is how the bond is sealed." She tugged him toward the great stone table at the edge of the square. The mother followed, her steps graceful, her robe trailing like silver fire. At the table, bowls of food were placed, strange fruits, cooked roots, steaming herbs. The girl sat quickly, her smile wide, her glowing eyes bright with joy. The mother stood across from him, her hands resting on the table, her eyes never leaving his. "Eat," she commanded, her voice calm but firm. "For once, food is shared. There is no breaking the bond." The human looked down at the food, his chest heavy. He thought of how it began. Just a piece of bread, just a sip of water, and now that small act had brought him here, standing at the edge of a life he never imagined. His hands shook slightly, but he reached forward, taking the food. The girl clapped her hands with joy, her voice rising. He accepts," she cried, her laughter filling the square. The mother's eyes softened, her lips curving into the faintest smile. "You have answered, human, not just with words, but with choice, with action." The human chewed slowly, his throat tight. But as he swallowed, the weight of the moment sank deep inside him. He was no longer just a stranger, no longer just a wanderer. He had been pulled into something larger, something binding, something alive. The crowd watched in silence now, their glowing eyes reflecting the firelight. Some nodded with respect, others turned away in anger, but none could deny what had happened. The human had answered, and by their law, he was part of them, forever bound, forever changed. The girl leaned against him, her small voice whispering softly, "I told you my mother was perfect for you." Her words made his chest tighten, not with fear, but with something else, something strange. The human looked across the table at the woman, her glowing eyes steady, her presence powerful, and in that moment he knew the bond was real. The mother spoke one last time, her voice like thunder wrapped in silk. "From this day forward, you are no longer stranger. You are no longer outsider, you are ours." The human's heart pounded, his breath uneven, but he did not look away. He had given food to a child, and in return, he had been given a family, a destiny, a future he had never expected. The fire crackled. The crowd dispersed slowly, their voices fading into the ruins. But the human stayed there, the girl by his side, the woman before him. And as the night fell, he realized his answer had sealed everything. The path ahead would not be easy. It would test him again and again, but for the first time in years he felt something he thought was lost. He felt he belonged,